Okay, for people on the live stream, I should explain this is a design review meeting for a feature that's coming in the next version of Wolfram Language. The particular feature we're looking at today is network packet capture. So the purpose of this is to capture packets from a network, very low-level operation. It's kind of cool that one can do this and get kind of a symbolic result that one can compute with. So let's give it, well, why don't we just give it a try? Let me just actually run the thing. So is there a function now, network packet capture, that has a GUI?
Yeah, the GUI is kind of in rough shape, but yeah.
Okay, so this is showing me the network adapters that I have. And Ken and Chris, if you want to comment on, does this seem sensible to you? I mean, I don't know what half these things are. There's a bunch of Ethernet ports, but I don't know what any of these other things are.
I mean, that's kind of what I expect. I don't know if those are the right ones for your machine, obviously, but they look like something that I would recognize if I were managing the system.
Okay. And what is like UTUN 0? What is that?
Those would be the tunnel
adapter.
Yeah, those would be the tunnel adapters.
The one question in my mind is, are all of those interfaces up on your system, or maybe we're showing interfaces that might eventually be there but aren't really up at the moment? There may be too much on that list.
Yeah, Ian, do you want to comment on that?
It is entirely possible that it is including ones that shouldn't be, or that are offline.
How does it know which ones are online? How does it know which ones exist on my machine versus which ones could theoretically exist in this operating system?
So it populates this list purely by asking the operating system. I would have to look at.
So here, let's just record something. Okay, so I just was recording from EN0. So that was a bunch of packets, 382 packets captured during that time from EN0. So just for fun, let's try capturing from another interface here. Anybody got a favorite interface in this list? Ken or Chris, do you want to comment on this? Anybody?
The wireless, is there a wireless one?
LO, if you've got that one, LO0, yeah, that'll do the loopback.
Okay. What the heck is that? What is that?
Your loopback. That is your loopback interface on your system.
What is a loopback interface?
The system has a built-in sort of virtual network interface to contact itself. It's a little bit odd, but more or less all systems that do TCP have this.
Is that for like temporarily storing things? Is it like a buffer, local buffer thing or something?
I mean, it allows you to make TCP connections without actually going through hardware network adapters. It's more of a, if you want to do IPC over, Ethernet or whatever, you can sort of do it that way.
So one thing you'll notice about the info column is there's no Ethernet hierarchy, specifically because of what they just said. It doesn't go to the actual Ethernet level in your networking hardware. It's just the operating system can just pass it around. So
okay, so just to understand here, these are ports. Do we have an identity? We might have somewhere else. I mean, what those ports are assigned to may be all kinds of different things. And so here, why is that lighting up? Why is that?
According to services, 497 is retrospect, but
oh gosh, I thought we killed retrospect. I thought I wasn't using retrospect anymore.
A good question. Well, I mean, it may not be on this machine. Obviously, it's just because the services file says that's the case doesn't mean that that's what's using it now.
Well, no, it could be it could be that we just discovered a piece of horror on my
hopefully not, yeah.
machine, right?
Right.
Let's see. If I want to, let's see, if I say normal of that, okay, so that's the actual raw payload of that packet. Okay. All right. So what we need to do, so one thing is that actual network packet capture in GUI. Has that been fed to graphic design yet?
Yep. So if you click over in the agenda notebook I sent, there's a design has a. If you scroll down, there's another section for network packet capture. Yep, there it is. So that's a rough design that they have.
Oh, why does it say? I mean, where does it have that pull down and things?
So I don't know why. It's roughly modeled after the NetTrain interface. So I'm not sure why the header is there at the top. Maybe just because that's what it was for NetTrain.
Who is the designer who worked on this? Carla?
Billy, sure.
Should we
Yeah,
see if
Billy.
Billy can join us?
Okay.
All right, go, Carla, can you see if he can join us?
I'll find him.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'd like to ask, I mean, that's amusing, but doesn't it burn CPU time and so on to maintain this thing?
So what we're doing is we're only going to collect these statistics. So we're only displaying statistics about the number of packets. We're not going to try and dynamically display individual packets. And so this is modeled. If you open Activity Monitor,
it's about once per second too. Like it's not continuous.
Okay, fine.
So
Okay.
There's a.
Yeah.
Okay, so there needs to be a pause and a stop button, just like in audio capture, right?
Yes, exactly.
I mean, because this should really be modeled, I think, after audio capture, which we should.
It is somewhat. I guess the question then I have is should we include a pause? Is it useful to be able to pause the capture and then restart it? Keeping the same data. It makes sense for audio. I don't know if it's that useful for network packets.
I think it's useful because I think you take an action, you pause the capture, you futz around, you get ready another web request, then you unpause the thing. Anybody want to comment on that?
It could be.
I think if it's easy to have a pause, we should have a pause.
Billy's on his way.
It is easy to have a pause, so we can have it. I mean, you can try out the pause in the GUI right now. The buttons are functional, so you can start a capture and pause it, and then restart it. I guess.
What did I just do here? Am I running this network packet capture?
No, you're running audio capture. You have to abort it. Right. That's.
Oh, I see that. That's lined up there. Hi. We're talking about the design of network packet capture GUI.
You should abort that audio capture thing sooner.
What's that?
You should click the X or do something with the audio capture, so because it's running like modally, like.
I understand that. I understand. I'm just watching what it's doing because I'm noticing that it is running modally, and that it has a real-time display of audio volume here. Whereas, and I'm going to ask whether the network packet capture thing has a similar display of there are packets going by, but you're not yet recording them. Do you get what I'm saying?
So that was a question that we had, is how I have it implemented right now is that you won't see any kind of dynamic activity until you click capture, and then it starts capturing. The reason I think that's, and I guess the same thing applies to audio, is that to get that stream to be able to display anything dynamically, you have to start capturing, and so it's kind of like eager in how it starts capturing things.
Well, do we want to do that? I mean, with audio, we've made the decision that we are going to show that even if we're not actually recording, because in the case of audio, we have these functions like this new audio start recording function that can essentially under programmatic control. So for example, let's imagine that you and systems people here, please speak up on whether this makes sense, want to say once an hour, capture 5 seconds of network traffic, right? For that, how would you do that?
So you could run, or go ahead.
No, I mean, you probably wouldn't use network packet capture. You would probably use the network, what is it called? Recording?
Recording. Network packet recording.
Okay, but we don't unfortunately have an audio recording that is called the same. I mean, then we would more naturally have an audio recording. Could somebody see if we can find Shadi? And let's just talk about the correspondence between audio recording and network packet recording.
In terms of whether that makes sense, I would say that it does, at least to the extent that you want to have programmatic control of starting and stopping the capture in some cases. Not necessarily once an hour, like you said, but if you want to have the capture not running and then kick off a process of some sort that you expect to generate some traffic, and then start the capture to see if it does so, or vice versa, that might be very useful.
All right. So Billy, what we're saying here, so there should be two states of this thing. The state before, assuming that we do not show, like in audio capture, a real-time display immediately, which I agree seems kind of useless in this case. There needs to be a state before capture was started, a state during capture, and a capture after capture was finished. Does that make sense, Billy?
Yep.
So
why is there a state after? After you just get the data set in the dialog.
Oh, yeah. Okay, fine. I'm wrong. Yes, you're correct. Okay, so right now, when we say network packet capture, yes. Okay, so actually the states aren't quite what you think they are, so to speak. So the first thing is something like this, where you're selecting the network interface, right?
Well, so the other thing is we're going to get rid of that drop down that I have there, and that's going to be an argument to the function. So the argument to network packet capture, like network packet recording, is an association where you specify, I want packets on port 80 or whatever, and one of those things you can filter by will be the interface. So you'll say interface goes to EN0.
Okay. Personally, as kind of a systems duffer, I like this pull down. I mean, I hate to say that because I don't know what network interfaces are on my machine, and how would I discover what network interfaces are on my machine?
So I added a $ function just for this. It's $ network interfaces.
Is it a $ thing, or can it change? I mean, if I unplug something, can it change?
You have to abort the network packet capture. So the $ function is reevaluated or like we go and ask the operating system every time you evaluate it. So it is like.
Wouldn't it be more natural to say network interface is open close then, if it's reevaluated every time?
Well, I mean, it's similar to like $ network connected, right? Like.
Okay, fine. All right. Okay, that's reasonable. Okay, the ordering of these things is just alphabetical. Any systems person want to comment on that?
I don't think order matters too much. Every system is going to be somewhat different in that respect, and some of them aren't even static between boots, I don't think, depending.
What do you mean? So
I mean, there's not. I don't know if there's really any good canonical order for the things. So alphabetical is fine.
Okay. All right. And is there any? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I bet you're about to ask about if there's a default. There's a $ default network interface, which is how I was choosing which one to select in the dropdown.
Is there? Amazing.
Indeed. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. Are there cooked names for these things? Or is it really just like it's dev whatever it is or whatever are these dev things in a Unix operating system or
generally not? They're not really represented in dev, which is weird for a Unix operating system, of course. But it's just a legacy thing that they really haven't been. You could probably get them on Linux and /sys or something somewhere, but they're not active devices.
Okay, but so there isn't a name, Ethernet 0 or something isn't naturally associated with EN0. It's just EN0.
Yeah, on Windows.
So I mean, you can tell based on the EN that it is an Ethernet interface, and in some systems you can tell particular different types of Ethernet adapters by the different names, but it's going to be different on Macintosh than Linux.
Okay. All right. Okay. Fine. So if this is the case, then I guess I agree with you that we just want network packet capture. So then the interface then is purely something which presumably when it comes up, it should show you what you asked for, right?
Right. I think, and that's what would show up if you clicked like the plus button is, if you'd specify network packet capture and then association of, port goes to, port goes to 80 or something like that.
But if we do audio capture, we're not showing, are we, something that says, no, there's nothing here that says audio. So I don't think we want that here either. Get what I'm saying, Billy?
I'm here as well, by the way, Shadi.
Okay. Yeah, Shadi, the question is, this is about network packet capturing. Do you know anything about this? This is about looking at being able to capture packets on
I was in one of the previous meetings. Yeah, I can. Yeah, I
Okay.
know what this is.
Okay, so the issue is that there is a function here called network packet recording, which is very
Okay.
analogous to the audio recording function or
Right.
the audio record function. And I think we need to be consistent in those names and in the
I agree.
functionality.
Yep.
So let's just look at, okay, network packet recording. What is the proposal here for how that works? It's just given a time.
There's
and it says
a function page for this as well, if you want to take a look at it.
Yeah, it's in CVS.
Tools.
The first argument is the time spec. The second argument is the filter specification.
Okay. So Shadi, how does that correspond to audio record?
The time specification we would like to have as well in audio record or audio capture. The problem why we didn't make it an argument in audio capture is that we decided to put the file name as the output path in the first argument. But that function is experimental for the same, for
I
that.
think the file name is kind of a crazy thing to have there because most of the time it's a UUID temp, it's some kind of UUID file, isn't it?
Yeah. If we don't specify it, yes.
I don't think people, I think let's just take a look for a second at audio capture. Okay, I think that's crazy, if I might say so.
Yeah, I actually like to propose something like the target location option
I agree.
For a lot of these functions that need a target location.
Well, or alternatively, what this is really a file location, which could in principle be none if you don't want the thing stored anywhere. Or it could be a temp file, which you want to have cleared at the end of the, at the end of the reboot session.
Mm-hmm. I like the file, what did you call it? File location none? How do we get the in-core version? If file location none means in-core, but I don't think it does really.
Well, why not? Well, look, if we say something like file storage, so I wonder whether we can get something from the persistent value world, because there we've got a persistence location, right?
Yeah.
That's a type of persistence location, which is a setting for, let's see. This is a persistent object that has a persistence location is not a totally stupid thing to have in the audio capture thing, to be able to go to that same set of persistence locations. Does that make sense? It's the same thing. You might want it to be preserved across one of these persistence locations.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose I can also imagine with this network packet capture that you might want the same kind of thing. So, look.
When you say same thing, like you want to be able to store it to a file, because currently it's entirely in core. There is no file processing of.
Well, fine. That's fine.
Packets, right?
Yeah, for packets. Yes. We might imagine that sometime in the future, but let's not worry about that right now. So what I think we should do with audio capture, and I think there are probably some other things, something like, I don't know, maybe it's persistent storage arrow blah blah blah, and persistent storage arrow none means don't do it, and persistent storage arrow a persistence location would generate a UUID object at that persistence location.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Similar to that persistent location, I like that. I haven't looked at this in details, but I like that we can save it per kernel, per front end, and so forth.
Yes.
But that just specifies the location. Do we have a persistence option that can specify, without specifying the location, saying whether I want it to be persistent across kernel sessions or front end sessions and so forth?
Yes. Okay. Hey, wait a minute. I'm just asking, does anybody know where this was being saved? Carla, do you know where we're saving this?
Let me check, but I don't think there's a specific place as of right now.
Okay, then we should, I'll save it in the core software engineering. Does anybody know where that is?
Let me check.
That we had a problem with meaning that you didn't have a folder for.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there is one.
Yeah, this one doesn't have a folder yet.
There probably should be though.
For packet capture?
No, for
Yeah, but
CFD.
also for core software engineering, it'd be great if you could create a folder for that.
I think I have one, but not in this area, in a different area. I'm pretty sure I have one. Okay, I will create one here, although I don't really believe I. Can we look?
Doesn't seem to be under ILD, but I'll check.
No, I understand. I don't think it is under ILD. I think it was somewhere else. Okay. Anyway, this is network packet capture. Packet capture. One. Okay, so Shadi, my point is, yes, exactly so. Persistence location, this is when you say persistent value and you give a persistence location, it is its business to figure out how to name the actual files that sit in that persistence location.
Okay.
Right, so you're simply saying make it persist across, for example, local to a computer based on home directory, which I think is a great way to do this, and so I'm suggesting something like persistent storage. The expert on this stuff is Roman, and maybe you guys can talk to him about that. Okay, sure. Let's come back to the audio recording business. So you're saying that you are perfectly happy to have audio capture, and what would audio capture having a number mean? It would mean when you trigger it, record for that amount of time?
Exactly. When you start recording, record for n seconds. But now also it has the max duration option, which is doing the same thing.
So I mean, so what I'm doing for network packet is there's two different functions for this. There's the capture function, which is your GUI, and if you want to run it for 5 seconds, you have to sit there and wait for 5 seconds and click it.
But how can you be exact? Then probably you have to trim it.
Then if you want to be exact, and you know exactly how long you want, then use the other function, network packet recording, which requires you to specify a time, 10 seconds or something like that. So I have it split into two functions.
Yeah, which is what's planned for audio as well.
Okay.
Can you specify a number of packets? If I want to capture, say, 50 or 100 packets from an interface?
That seems like a sensible thing to be able to specify.
Yeah, I don't know how. Yeah, I think that's useful. I don't know what the design for specifying that looks like.
Let's think about that for in a moment.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I can imagine things with units, but that's a little weird. But I notice also that for audio capture, you have this capture running thing, analogous to animation running.
Exactly.
Which Ian should also consider for network packet capture.
I think, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we should have a capture running that if capture running is true, then the GUI just starts running and you just hit stop.
Now, interestingly, here you've got an audio input device, which is the analog of the network interface. Which is kind of interesting.
Yes.
I mean, it suggests that you might want a network interface option for network packet capture, but let's not worry about that for a second. So then, okay, so you have got something where network packet recording, analogous to audio recording, would default. So there is an argument, it seems to me. Okay, so systems folk here, is it more useful to have a time or to have a number of packets?
I think it's useful to have both. If there was a way to specify both, that would be really useful.
Quantity, time quantities, and then the number could be the number of packets.
Possibly.
Right.
I mean, packets are also, I note that I'm pretty sure there's a unit for packets, which might be used for food and things like this. Yes, there is. That, I mean, that may be oh gosh, there's data packets also. Interesting, because I think packets is, packets of sugar and stuff like this.
Right.
So we could do it with quantities. We could do it. I think the problem is that we'd like to have consistency because audio capture won't have, if a pure number doesn't really have much that it could mean other than time in seconds. There's no sense of, I don't know what else it would mean.
We do support quantity samples for audio.
Oh, what do you mean quantity? What do you mean?
So quantity 4,000 samples.
Interesting. Okay, so look, maybe the right thing to do with network packet capture is, I mean, we just have to decide what's the default. Now, this question about whether, I don't know what the difference between data packets and packets is, and we should determine that from the units team. I mean, I could probably figure it out. Let's take a look. I mean, we can probably figure this out, but maybe we don't need to do this right now. Let's just go, if we go, let's see. If we go to Wolfram Alpha and we say 34 packets, wow, okay, that's interesting. It didn't do anything. Okay, I mean, that wasn't very useful, but at least it was, it did interpret it. So I suspect that could be made to parse, 34 packets could be made to default parse to data packets.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think it should default to time myself, just based on what we normally do with packet captures. That would be slightly more useful more of the time.
I would agree with that. Default to time, and then have a method to input for packets.
Okay. I mean, I wouldn't even mind if I had to run length to get the count of packets, necessarily.
What about a method option to network packet recording, where method goes to time or method goes to?
Horrifying.
Okay.
I mean, I think a better strategy for that would be, you know, something like this: time goes to whatever, or packets goes to whatever. But I don't think that's. I don't think we need that. I don't think we need to cross that bridge. I think that what we should do is simply to use units. I mean, we've got units. Let's use units. So the action items here are we need to talk to T alpha units and get them to change the default parsing in control equals for a number and then packets. Carla, can you take that?
Sure.
Do you understand the issue and you understand what to do?
Yes.
Okay. Then so then we'll look for the quantity that is it's probably called data packets, or we'll look for a time quantity. Make sense? And you should also get from the units folk, you can what probably do, you can ask for unit dimensions to find out if it's a information, you know, if it's packets, because you also want to deal with if some crazy person says 2 kilopackets, you want to deal with that.
Right. We have unit compatible queue, I think.
Okay.
There are functions for checking that kind of thing. Yeah.
Fine. Okay. All right. Okay. So then I think that will work for audio recording and network packet recording. So that's all consistent. Makes sense. Okay. Let's loop back to Billy and the graphic design. So what we're saying is, what we should see initially is you do network packet capture, and all it should show you is kind of a go button. Is that correct, guys? It should reflect some of the information on what you've requested and then show you a go button. Is that true?
That seems pretty reasonable.
Mm-hmm. You can go to my design folder. I had been working on something earlier today and just a little bit now during the meeting.
Okay.
Just going to talk to you if you'd like.
Okay, great. Where is it? CSE?
Yep. And then it should be the PNG. Yeah.
Which one?
The top one. So you could ignore the stuff on the bottom. I'm still playing around, but at least we could talk to this.
Okay, my only problem with that is it looks like an opener. How do we make it not look like an opener? And I don't think we know yet, packets in, packets. Oh, I see. You're proposing that the recording, that the initial state of the recording says there weren't any packets. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, to show that there's this is like nothing's happened yet, but we're set up to go.
Yeah. And I guess one thing that's slightly different about this is, so you see the middle part where it says port 80, IP address 127, you know, whatever number that is. That would only show up if you had an association argument to network packet capture that said port goes to 80, IP address goes to, you know, whatever.
Right, and also another comment about that is you've got the network interface specifier, you've got a bunch of other things. There could be a fairly long list in that association, couldn't there be?
There could be, yeah. If you have a very specific set of things you're looking for, yes.
Is it useful to reflect that list here, or who cares? I mean,
it was something mentioned. You mentioned that you wanted to have it displayed like a table when we had this meeting last time.
I think you could truncate it for looks if you wanted to, because if we're specifying a long list of properties that we want in a packet, there's a good chance we've just done that right above.
Yeah,
and
right.
I don't think there's any reason to necessarily repeat it all back if we don't have the room.
Is there any scenario in which the interface gets disembodied, so to speak? Shadi, do you know about that for audio capture? Is there a case where the audio capture interface kind of separates from the actual audio capture input line?
No. Or
Fine.
if you actually make it another input, so if you start writing around it.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, fine, that's true.
But
yes.
But not with any other types of editing.
Well, I mean, you could have something which is a input pop-up dialogue or something that contains just that interface and where you don't ever see what it came from.
If we wanted to do something like, that would be something we'd done on purpose. We could always fill it with whatever state information was appropriate at that time, I think. I don't know if necessarily designing for what I think that's a big edge case. I don't think it's going to be
fine. So then let's not have the information there. Let's just have this. Now, how do we indicate a start button? And by the way, I don't think that's our standard. Is this blue the standard that we're using for start buttons and so on?
That's what audio is using.
But is this the initial state of audio to have a start button that looks like that?
On hover, I think on hover it looks, no, the initial state is gray. On hover it looks like light blue, and then, well, maybe it is actually.
No, but look. This has a red record button. Nothing like.
It's actually more like what I would expect, to tell you the truth.
Okay, so Billy, I don't see why. I mean, the only problem. Yeah, I mean, the thing that's nice about this is it gives you the time that it's been recording here, right? Which we need here as well. And by the way, if you're giving a packet number, is that the packets in, packets out, packets where?
So I mean, this we just basically mocked this up from what OS X does with Activity Monitor. I don't know. I mean, I think that I can introspect to figure out which packets were coming into the machine versus going out based upon the IP address.
Well, maybe it's interesting. I don't know. The system. Okay, listen. Okay, we've got several different moving parts here. One is in network packet capture, or rather network packet recording. You are saying, let's have a way to say, get such and such a number of packets. Okay, so then the next question is that bulk packets both ways, or is that, counting incoming packets? Do you get what I'm saying? Or counting outgoing packets? So unless we then break the specifier for what we're asking for there into some association right there that says, go ahead.
So I was just going to say, so what Wireshark doesn't actually make that distinction. Wireshark just says packets per second. It just says, here's the total number of packets you've got.
Yeah, and
so
if we were counting packets, that's what I would expect to see, but I can't say for sure what they're doing over here.
The main reason that we just have the in versus out distinction there is because this morning we were looking at Activity Monitor in OS X, and that's what Activity Monitor shows. I am perfectly fine, and I think it would be very logical to just say, number of total packets we've recorded, packets per second, and not make that direction,
Okay. I mean, it is relevant, when you are looking at, debugging Wi-Fi or something, it's highly relevant how many packets are coming back and how many packets are going out, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it's useful information. I don't necessarily mind having it if there's, that's another one of those things. If there's room for it, that's great.
Okay, but let's, okay, so then what we're saying is the two things that should be in the initial interface are, it's going to say 0 because that's time 0 and 0 packets, right, that have been recorded. So roughly what we're going to need to say is, in the interface, there's going to be a red button, and it's then going to otherwise say, there's going to be the button there, whatever it looks like, whatever our red button looks like, together with, then somewhere it's got to say 0, what is it going to say? 0000, which is the time. And somewhere it's going to say 0 packets. And maybe
the graph would be right below it.
What's that?
The graph would be right below it, right?
I would think so, even though that's not actually what we do. Okay, so, and then here, maybe we give at least the interface, EN0 or something here, just as some indication of what we're recording on. Do you get what I'm saying?
What about the case where, for example, if you just run, don't specify the interface for network packet recording, it will capture on all interfaces. What about that case for network packet capture? You just have all?
We should indicate that too, probably, yeah, somehow.
Yeah, just say all in gray.
Yeah, I like the idea of specifying all.
Okay.
Okay, so there is an all setting for network packet capture. Okay, fine. So then this is the thing. Then what do we think about this kind of display here?
I mean, it's confusing to me. The
what is that? Packets in versus packets out over time, or?
Yeah. I don't
we
know.
talked about it this morning, whether we should do a line graph or a bar chart. Those are sort of the two options.
I think a bar chart, because they're events, because there might be no packets for a while, particularly the filtered packets, right? Because these are, what it's going to show is presumably the filtered packets.
And then the other option is you can also go downwards, like, like packets that are coming in the positive direction and packets that are going out in the negative direction.
Okay, let's look at that in a second, because the next question here is, do we want to indicate whether it's filtered? Because we're going to be showing, I think we're going to need to say filtered or something like this, or perhaps give the filtering criteria here if we can, or at least as,
Well, so I mean, now we're coming back in a circle where.
Yes, I know. Where we're actually giving the information there again, and I'm kind of saying that we should, because I think otherwise it's very, very, very unclear. I'm just concerned about the UI being very unobvious that this is a record button, because people are used to the motif of a microphone that's showing the bouncing whatever it is, right? And that's a record button. I mean, if necessary, I suppose we could label it record or start. Billy, your comments. Do you think we can get away with, can we do something which says start here and not have it be totally inconsistent with the other things we're doing?
I do have a mock-up over there where I make it a large button, so that way and maybe it's a little bit heavy-handed, but I think that having the word start or some indication that gets you going couldn't hurt.
All right. Well then, okay. Then maybe what we do is we just say start capture here. And we have essentially a thing which uses that red motif, but has a bigger button that just says start capture. Underneath, we have something where it's gray 000 packets. Okay. And then underneath that, we would have a graph. And the graph, if it is heavily filtered, there will simply be a burst of, in a particular bin, and then the label of the graph is basically packets per second, isn't it? Because those are bins of 1 second. Okay, so then the question is incoming versus outgoing packets. Okay, system folk, how should we show that?
I don't think we should do it with the outgoing packets being shown as negative. That would be not really. It's not an obviously correct way to do it. The way it's done here is actually not bad, I don't think. And I think you're right that based on the fact that you might not have some for some period of time, it's probably better not to use a line graph.
Right. But the fact that they're interspersed like this, I mean, is it typically the case that the amount of incoming and outgoing traffic is even vaguely balanced? I don't think so.
I mean,
no, not necessarily. I mean, it depends. It heavily depends on the application.
Yeah. Yeah, Chris is right. It really does depend. And I think what we've got right here is it's not confusing, and it really just depends on the application. So.
Okay. All right. Well then, but then what Billy is doing there is he's got color coding that indicates packets in and out. I mean, look, the other thing we could do initially, if is just to show total packets per second and not worry about the in and out. It is interesting to see in and out, but
it would be interesting actually to see what this would look like if the packets, the graphs, the bars are basically stacked on top of each other instead of overlapping, because that's really, when you add them up, that's the number of total packets on the interface at any given time, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that would be more useful. Yeah.
I sent you a screenshot of like some other options on your Rocket chat.
I can see that. I mean, I don't even know how to move this over. There we go.
Yeah. That's an in-out graph. So the outbound is negative axis, inbound is.
I don't believe in that.
And then you can stack for different types of traffic as well.
Yeah, well, that's nice. Being able to stack, being able to color code for different types of traffic. But I mean, I think that's more of a network packet graphics function that one could do. Let's not put that in this user interface. Okay, but what and I don't really believe in this in and out thing. It's not like an accounting system, is it? I mean, it's not like conservation of packets or something, right? Guys, there's no useful sense of it.
But you might want to know, for example, that you're generating a lot of outbound packets, or you have a lot of inbound traffic and you're not answering much of it. Those might be useful things to know. Whether it's something important to put here is a separate question, I guess.
All right, well, look. Okay, so our choices are stacked, positive, negative, or interspersed. What do we pick? I mean, we could also, in principle, have a selector that chooses between them.
I'm fine for something really simple for this live thing, because there's a lot of overhead in generating the graph, and then have additional network packet graph functions that can help you, with the analysis after the fact, after you're done recording. That might be good.
Okay.
I think the thing that's going to be the most useful to have immediately is a stacked bar. That way you can tell which portion of each second is inbound and outbound, but you can also see relative to the rest of the graph how much traffic there is. That seems to me to be the most useful thing that you can get out of.
Okay.
I mean, you can see it on your Mac if you open your what's that called on a Mac? The
activity monitor.
Activity monitor. I mean, it's very simple even on a Mac. Like they don't go to your network, and then it should. How do you? Oh, there we go. Okay. See, I mean that little picture in the center bottom. I mean, that's all they do on the Mac. Like, it's very simple.
Well, they're doing positive and negative, right? They're doing packets in, packets out.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yeah, but there's no axes, no nothing. It's just
Well, I note what's interesting here. I didn't think I was running this stupid retro client thing. What's interesting here is the way that they're sorting it by process name. Oh, but we can't do that.
No. It's just we're just talking about the bottom part. Don't look at the top part.
We have no capability to distinguish between, packets going to a certain process or not.
Yeah, I mean, the closest thing you could get would be port, and that's, it's not really.
It's really the bottom graph we're discussing, like how to do that, whether to do a line graph, a bar chart, whether to stack things, whether to make a distinction between input and output, whether to make distinctions between, interfaces you've selected, those sort of thing, and how much, if we can actually do that live every second,
Well, can we do it live, Ian?
Can we do what live? Sorry.
This display.
Like the simplest things we probably can, but the more complicated you make it,
Well, yeah, I mean, we can, the simple display of just a graph, as long as it's not updating too quickly, it's fine to do that. I mean, that's why we were talking about only updating it once a second. That's fine.
By the way, if there are multiple interfaces involved, showing only a single color for in and out. You know what? I think what we should do initially, if we can show input and output, how are we going to color code the input and output? And by the way, this doesn't make any sense, this packets in per second, because this is a very, ragged line. And particularly if it's been heavily filtered, it's incredibly ragged. And to say blah, blah, blah per second when there are just two two spikes, basically, doesn't make a lot of sense. See what I'm saying?
That might be useful, but it would only be useful if your link was saturated and you wanted to get a more accurate count of how much traffic was
right, but you can get that from somewhere else. I mean, you can get that from the
no, that's a pretty specific case.
All right, so I think what we should do is we should just have a caption. It should just say, it can say packets per second, and then actually really we want to say, I mean, we just need a little blob of color and say in, out. And then we show the graph. And the blob of color is just as the caption to show which part of the thing is incoming versus outgoing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You can also refresh the design just to see it progressing a bit more. But I don't have what you just put down.
Which one is your, this one here. Yeah, I think these have got to be integrated because that really is a start capture. The whole thing is just a start capture. And I don't think we're going to have this pull down here.
Okay.
I mean, we could do this if we want to. I don't think this per second is going to make any sense.
If you got a graph by the second, I'm not sure I'd be too concerned about putting the information elsewhere. I mean, what that would be, I assume, would be an average per second, which you could always.
Yeah, it's just a count, right? Like you count for 1 second, and then you draw a new line.
Yeah, and if it's an instantaneous count, it's going to bounce all over the place. If it's the sort of time to date, packets to date divided by total time, it's going to be.
Sorry, I was going to say if it's instantaneous, that's not going to make any sense to have.
No, it's going to make no sense.
Average, it might, but it's not that important.
Right. Okay.
I mean, I guess one advantage I see of having that is that currently we don't have any label on, or don't have any axis label on the y-axis of the graph. Right. So I mean that's one advantage is if you're looking at this graph and it's like, okay, I see some blue lines, but like, I mean, we could just add a label on the y-axis, right?
We could say.
Look, this is really a little preview cartoon thing, like that. It's not if you really want to do analysis on it, then you plot your data that you record. I mean, like this is a tiny little.
Here's what we could do. We could have the color swatch thing, and then we could say average : blah 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 packets per second.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which is both in and out.
Okay. Yeah. Then.
By average, I mean over the complete recording range.
Right. So the first like color swatch in and out thing, that's just total packets, right?
It's nothing. It's just showing you a color that one's red and one's whatever.
Oh, it's just like a legend.
Yeah.
I see.
And this is telling you the packets, total packets, and this is a little small thing in gray saying average blah, blah, blah packets per second that will update.
Okay.
Will there be numbers in your brackets next to in and out, or is it just meant to be for color?
Just little color swatches. In fact, you can just color the words in and out if you want to. It's just trying to indicate, you know, what's in the plot. Let's see if you can mock that, something like this, okay? And remember, we're removing this, so you don't have this anymore. And
well, it's still a specification, it's just not a drop-down. Or are we completely?
I think we're completely removing it.
Okay.
Okay, can we return, please? Okay. So I think that's okay. And remember, we are having a pause button. Once you've started recording, we are having a pause button, and we're having an end capture button.
Yep. And there's also the cancel button. If you bring up the interface and just want to cancel it before you start recording anything, you can press cancel.
How do you do that in audio capture?
The stop button is just the cancel button before you hit.
Oh, I see. I see.
Start.
So it's this then.
Yep. And if you hit record, then that turns into the stop button.
You know, I have to say, there's a certain value, it seems to me, of just having an icon, an iconographic thing here that's just animating back and forth, that indicates network traffic, that is directly analogous to this capture interface. Right? I mean, this one happens to have content in it, but we could perfectly well have something which just has a little thing that is bouncing back and forth with arrows.
Well, so a lot of network tools do have in and out traffic lights. Basically, they just blink when they see packets. That's
well, if it's possible to do that, great. But we don't want to hang up our whole system for the sake of doing that.
Right.
And initially, we could simply just have something directly analogous to this. Okay. And then we don't have to have the weird thing that says start capture because it's totally obvious. That thing will start, you know, and then we do the mouse over again with record. Then we do 00 on the left, and then we would say blah, blah, blah packets on the right. Okay.
And then right below that, then we have your color swatches for in and out and average, and then the graph, right?
Yeah, when the graph starts coming up. But we don't have that in the state where you haven't started recording. Yeah.
I guess one other thing if you click on the drop down for audio capture, the graph that's displayed, I think you have to hit record for that graph to start doing something.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, there are no labels on that, right? It's just purely, labelless graph.
Yeah, well, maybe the right way to do it is to keep it more iconic and to just have an arrow up in, an arrow up in blue and down in red or something. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And forget about showing this average. Or maybe we show the average sort of on top of the graph on the right-hand side. Billy, can you try and mark these things? This is what my favorite would be, is to have something directly analogous to audio capture and not to try and have something too elaborate here. Can we come back to the design for a minute, please? Billy, are you okay trying to mock that up?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to the design. Where was your design notebook? I lost it. There we go.
There it is.
Okay, I don't know. Okay, so by the way, did you have documentation pages for these things? Yes.
Yeah, just for network packet recording now. The other ones I haven't made pages for yet.
Okay, I mean, we could have the full association here contain both the time and the packet number. See what I'm saying? And that the whole thing is a single association which has port and time and etc.
That's true. We could integrate those things. That would be fine. I mean, I'm just thinking for the simple case is like I want to record for 10 seconds. I just type network
Yeah,
packet.
no, I know. That's definitely what we want. But then I want to record for 10 seconds. So what you would have here, if you say I want to record for 10 seconds, and let's actually try it. Actually, let me just try network packet recording. Okay, I'm going to record for 0.1 seconds.
You're probably going to get nothing, but go ahead. Okay, that is a bug.
Not nothing.
Yeah, it's not nothing. Yeah.
And what the heck am I getting here? Okay. So I got 1,800 packets. Okay, so now let's say I want to record just packets going out of what? I want to record just Ethernet packets. How do I do that?
So I haven't hooked up the protocol argument yet. The only things that currently work are destination port, source port, destination IP address.
What's the difference between port and source port?
Port is both destination and source. Is that right?
Yeah, port is either the destination or the source port.
The union.
Yeah, the union. Yeah, interface is currently it's using the old design where the interface was the third argument. But we're going to change that. Right?
So that is source or destination port.
True. Yes, that's a better way.
Okay, so give me a port number. 80.
Well, 88. Okay.
Port 80.
You probably want to do something in a web browser.
Yeah, I would do like 10 seconds and then go in your web browser and do something.
Okay, this is cool. All right, I got to get to my web browser.
Quick.
Help.
Too late.
No, I'm not too late. I'm too late. Okay.
Well, you probably already got port 80 traffic going back.
I got no port 80 traffic. There was nothing there.
Yeah, maybe sorry, I thought when it was auto.
HTTPS. So you got to go not HTTPS.
Oh, right. That's not necessarily port 80, is it?
Well,
yeah,
what's that?
If you go,
okay, there you go.
If you go,
there you go.
Well, what are those?
It was the initial request that was not secure, and then you got to upgrade it to secure.
Yeah, so if you do host lookup of that destination IP address.
Okay, but let's take this as an example, okay? Because what I'd really like to be able to do is to say port goes to HTTP or port goes to HTTPS. Because we do have those traditional ports, right? So we have, in fact, HTTP should be understood as a network service. Brilliant. So let's see what properties we have for that network service. Wake up. Okay, look at that. Isn't that cool? So we should be able to say, I mean, to me, the following would be a really nice thing to be able to do. If I could say something like, here, let me indicate it. If I could do this, I mean, just to be useful, so to speak, if I could say HTTP or HTTPS, and have that bring me 10 seconds worth of HTTP and HTTPS traffic.
So then,
go ahead.
I was going to say there's a POSIX and BSD system call get served by name that does literally what you're saying there. So I'm sure that there's a reasonable way to do that, and it's probably a good idea. So,
I mean, would that be? Go ahead.
I was just going to say two things. One, the get served by name. Yes, I actually wrote a Wolfram Language wrapper for it that is internal to the sockets package. So that exists, and you could use that. The other thing I would say is that for this like cooked form where you're not specifying a association, is it most common to want to specify a service like this? I don't know if that's the most common thing you want to filter for. Is
probably
basically
So I don't know that it's the most common, but this is something that we should support.
It is really common.
Speaking from a networking standpoint, we do want to support this.
But I mean, there's no reason why we can't. as a convenience, just say something like that, because CMP, there's probably no, yeah, I mean, we could say, you could say ask for UDP packets, and you could do it this way, because I don't think there's an overlap, is there, between service names and protocol names? Is there?
There might be.
Probably not. Yeah, I'd have to double check.
Well, worst
so
case is
the
you
other
have it be
thing-
the entity. Worst case is we can have a default for the string, but if you really care, you can use the entity, like this thing here, like this network service entity.
So the other thing is that this, if we're using like the get served by name function, it could it's looking up a file like etc, I think
Services, yes.
Services, etc/services. So that could be customized for, and somebody could have some random reason they have, I don't know, CMP go to some non-standard port.
That would be a weird case, but they could. On the other hand, if they had been editing services, they probably would be able to figure that problem out.
Yeah, true, and that's probably something that they're reasonably aware of what they're doing. Okay, so okay. So the default form of if it's not an association, the second argument can either be a string like you have of a service name, or an entity that is a network service, right?
I think so.
Right.
But I mean, there's also, we need entities for protocols, which we don't seem to have. So that's something we'll need to go to the curation folk to get those in due course, for UDP and so on. I'm a little confused by this. I didn't know that there even were UDP ports for HTTP. Should I know that?
Well, I mean, HTTP is just another level down from like TCP or UDP, right? That's
no, I understand.
So
I didn't think you used UDP to transmit HTTP.
Oh no, I mean, I don't know of any clients that use.
Yeah, I don't know of any that do, but apparently it's listed in services that way. Yeah, I mean, I just checked mine, and it is listed as possibly using UDP. So
it's in the RFC. So
what is what is SCTP? Is that a typo, or is that an actual?
No, it's an actual thing, but I can't remember what it is. It's something transport protocol.
Stream control transmission protocol.
Yeah.
Okay.
No idea what it's used for, but
I've seen it before also. But okay, so let's say that I wanted to capture CMP packets, and I'll do a ping. Okay. And let me just watch that. How would that be done here? So I would say network packet recording, and then how would I say this for the CMP packets?
So I mean, I think maybe you would say service as the key goes to. I don't know. Well, so this is what it would look like if you want to run this right now. You'll have to use the port number, and I don't know what port number CMP uses.
What does ping use? I mean, ping.
I don't
ICMP,
remember
right?
off the top of my head.
The
ICMP.
What's that?
I was pretty sure it's ICMP.
It's ICMP.
So
okay, so what's the port number?
I'm looking.
I don't remember. I'll have to look it up.
I'm sure there is one.
Yeah, it might not be.
It is 58. Oh, that's not right.
Yeah, I don't actually see any port defined for ping, so it may actually not use ports.
How could it work? How does it work if it doesn't use
Well,
ports?
I mean, so it might be low enough on the network stack that it uses the IP address and doesn't specify a port. I'd have to double check how ICMP works.
So,
but that may be...
I think ICMP is similar to like TCP, where it just makes a connection without using a port. Yeah, that's what the RFC
it definitely runs over IP, but it doesn't seem to do anything
it's a protocol,
like in terms of ports.
Okay, so then what I would expect here, if I do, let me just try actually running something, okay? So what I would like to do is if this is, let's just see how crazy I am or not. So let's do 1 second of recording, and I want to do a ping to that. So let's say network and
Well, so network packet recording blocks, so you won't get the ping. Even if it was going over a port, you won't get it.
oh, how do I do this then?
So unfortunately, the way that we were going to do it is network packet recording submit. However, there's some task things that weren't ready for this, and I haven't had time to hook it up.
Session submit like this.
Well, because you should probably use local submit. Session submit will interrupt the kernel.
Okay, but if I do local submit, will that NPR be set in the right place?
It'll be set in, and so local submit will start a new kernel and start running that. I think the task object you get back from local submit, you can use to get the evaluation result. So if you say, task equals local submit of just network packet recording, and then, yeah, I think that should do something. And then if you do task of a value, I forget what it's called. There's some property for task object to get the evaluation result. Oh, it's just called evaluation result. Yeah, there you go.
Huh. That's no good. Task is gone.
I thought it would save that.
Okay, that's an issue for the folks dealing with task objects. Let's ask them how to do this. That will be Konstantin, I guess.
So I think what you could do is you could do it with handler functions.
Yeah, that's a mess. That's a mess.
Yeah.
So, but you're proposing, and Shadi, what is the analog of that for audio recording? Are we really going to have an audio recording submit? Because that's the same thing. You can do it asynchronously.
Right.
I just checked, by the way. ICMP does not care about any port. It does not even listed in the ICMP header. So.
Okay. Well, so I don't quite understand then. I mean, are we going to have a proliferation of these submit functions?
I don't think that would be neat. No, probably one kind of a submit that then we can do audio, submit audio recording, submit network packet recording, or something like that would be cleaner.
Yeah, I agree. But what we've got so far, I mean, things like URL submit. Yeah, because most of these submit functions, yeah, they need, they need callback functions. They need handler functions, because otherwise it's not clear what they do, right, guys? I mean, if they're asynchronous.
Yeah.
So actually, under those circumstances, I don't know why we need to submit things at all. Why aren't we just doing session submit and just setting a variable?
So the reason why session submit does not work for a majority of these cases is because even if the underlying task is run in another thread, session submit blocks the kernel from evaluating anything else. So even if you did session submit of pause infinity, your kernel is just blocked forever. Like, even though it's not, the kernel isn't actually evaluating anything, the kernel's blocked. That's just how session submit works.
Right. So your claim is that what we really need to do is a local submit with a handler function that says evaluation finished goes to whatever.
Something like that, yes.
Okay.
And I think perhaps that's the cleaner way. But then it's almost like we need another kind of generalized submit function to handle this that works like session submit, but doesn't block the kernel.
I thought session submit had a method option to not block the kernel. I mean, session submit is supposed to run an interstitial time in the kernel, which is not going to work for these because these have to run at a definite time. If you want packet capture for 10 seconds, you don't want it to do that only when you happen to have an input prompt up.
Right.
Can you guys still hear me, or did I just lose network?
I can hear you.
Hello?
It just said my internet is unstable.
You're
Let's
good,
look
you're
at the
good,
Zoom packets.
You're good.
Can hear you.
Where are the Zoom packets, by the way? Does anybody know? What are the port numbers for Zoom?
That's a good question.
8801, 8802.
Okay, so here I could see, if I say, how do I get multiple ports here?
Yeah, you would do it with the list. I haven't hooked that up yet.
Or we should do it with a pattern. Okay, so let's see in this, if I move my cursor around on the screen, it should be sending all kinds of junk. That's interesting. So it comes, these are both incoming and outgoing.
Yep.
What is this? This is a local host thing,
That
right?
is your machine.
Okay.
Presumably includes audio as well, so that's why it's incoming and outgoing. It's not just you streaming out; it's also audio coming in.
It's also using 443, which is HTTPS.
Okay, but this, what we're seeing here, what I'm seeing here is the Zoom traffic, correct?
Correct.
1 second of Zoom traffic. So let's just use this as an example to actually, so this is relative time. So how would I actually plot this in an interesting way? So let's say I take, I'm just going to use this as, because I want to actually analyze this a bit. Does anybody know why we're still seeing blue in the X kernel here? That's a bug that we've seen for a week or so. I know that, I think for you. You seeing that?
Oh, I see it. I see it. You mean it's not turning black?
It's not turning black.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's take a look here at np all comma relative time. Oops. And then I guess what we would do.
You could look at the differences to see.
That's what I was going to do.
Yeah, I was thinking gaps between packets would be interesting.
There it is. So the average gap. So if we look at this, we can look at histogram. Ever looked at this, guys, before?
Nope.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's I mean, that's probably an exponential. It doesn't look that exponential to me, actually, but it probably should be an exponential distribution. So let's just for fun, let's look at all packets that came in over the course of a second, and let's just see what the corresponding result is. I mean, again, we're just mainly trying to do this for the sake of just seeing something definite that we can play with. So that would be all comma relative time. Now, I mean, one thing is that you're now returning in this association all this stuff, including the actual payloads, Ian. And one might argue that you should be able to get just this relative time thing without requesting anything else. Can you?
Yeah, I mean, no. I mean, right now, you just get the full data set returned. I don't know what the design for selecting just part of that would be.
Well, it would be a properties thing. I mean, it would surely be a properties thing. Oops, that's not what I want. Okay. Well, so let's talk about that, because that does seem useful to be able to get request only parts of that data set. Presumably, it's much faster to do that. So that would be network packet recording with a third argument, where the first argument, I mean, this is what's getting a little funky here, because the second argument can be quite ornate. And, you know, the combination of first argument and second argument, I mean, there might be an argument for doing network packet recording and then either an association, which gives time, packets, blah, 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 or as an alternative to that, a pure, you know, time, or a pure packets. See, I can imagine something that would be useful would be 1, HTTP. Means 1 second HTTP traffic. Or alternatively, you could, if you really wanted to, say 1, and then the association.
So you're suggesting that the kind of like filter arguments be inside a list.
I'm not necessarily saying, I'm saying that they can be in a single association, or you can use these sort of shortcut ones, or you can use a combination of the list, and one of the elements of the list could be a full association, fully qualified association that gives filtering arguments.
So, but then the first argument is always specification about the time, or the filters, or the
everything
service.
About what you're getting, everything about what you want to capture, and the second argument will be about what you want to return.
Okay, I see.
I mean, that seems fairly useful because that way, I mean, I don't know, in terms of the returns, okay, so this is a good example of what we can do here. Now, what would you like to know, Ken? Debugging Zoom, what would you like to know here? What would be an example of something you'd like to know, just to check whether we can do it?
So I mean, one of the things I would like to know is if we actually dropped a packet.
How would we see that? That's one thing
I would look at. So we would have to have been recording when it happened.
And you would have to compare sequence numbers, right? And
yep, and we'd have to compare the sequence numbers of the packet.
Where is the sequence number? Is it in
well,
the
all of these packets are UDP. TCP packets would have,
and TCP would have sequence numbers. So that would
be a bit different then.
Yeah.
Okay, but so if you wanted to know if we, I mean, there's no way to know if you dropped a UDP packet, right? That's the whole point.
There's no way to know on these packets.
There's not really a good way.
So I mean, we could look at the time differences, which we've already done, and we see a few gaps. So.
Right. I mean, that's curious. If they're audio UDP packets, one would expect them to be going out in a somewhat fixed sequence.
Yep. And so we see
this actually. Sorry, I was going to say this actually brings up a point that I was going to mention, and that is a lot of the work that we do in terms of debugging network things. It tends to involve capturing packets in one spot and analyzing the capture elsewhere. And I really think we should, at some point, support importing and exporting PCAP files. But if we could do that, excellent. So if we could do that, we could probably capture the packets at the source system and then later on to see if there are any missing between points.
By the way, in the PCAP importer, is there documentation for the PCAP importer?
I don't remember if we made. Well, one thing I want to say before I forget. Is we support full importing of PCAP files. That's included with this, and we'll go into 11.3. Exporting of PCAP files, however, is something that we're not going to do for 11.3. That's quite a bit more complicated in terms of the things that we have in Wolfram language and how we represent it symbolically and how that maps to the actual PCAP binary format. But setting that aside, so that's about PCAP files. I don't remember if we did. Let me check and see if we have format page for PCAP. No, we do. We did not make that page, so that would be a new page. But
okay, so we need that. Carla, that's something for you to chase that.
Yes.
And in terms of the elements for the PCAP output, they're going to end up being either data set or probably the specific labels up here. Would that be right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so currently all it does is just the data set. And if you want individual things, you have to query the data set. But
okay. Did we agree on this info thing, by the way, before?
So I guess maybe the name, you might want to change the name, but we agreed on that kind of like hierarchy of that each level of the packet, right? The raw level is just the payload. UDP has some stuff, and then TCP has more like sequence number, stuff like that. Ethernet has IP MAC addresses.
So why isn't this like what should this be called? Packet information or something? What should it be called?
Yeah, I mean, packet information is just a more verbose form of info, so I'm fine with that.
Okay, fine. I mean, that would be more consistent, I think, with what we're seeing over here. Now, in terms of this, are these at the same level? Ethernet to IP, UDP? I mean, aren't these different levels of the network stack?
Yes, the data set organized it a little weirdly. Each info, so if you take that data set and just get like the first one, it'll make a little bit more sense because it's a list of associations. The packet information column is a list of associations where,
I see. That's the Ethernet 2 information. That's the IP information. That's UDP information.
Yep, exactly. Yes.
Okay, let's just look at a port. Can somebody give me another port that will be fairly active that involves a TCP port?
You could try 443.
What is that? Is that mail? What is 443?
HTTPS.
No, that's HTTPS. Mail is 25.
Okay, well, let me go somewhere.
Well, SMTP is 25.
Well, I'm surprised that's not showing up.
Oh, it did this time.
There we go.
Okay. All right. So now, okay, there's the TCP sequence number. What's that?
There's 4.
What does that mean? 4 watts. Oops, I went all the way back there. What are you saying here? So what are we seeing here? How do we interpret this? So let's take the first of these packets on line 53. Okay. So fine, that's all fine. Destination port, source port, destination port. By the way, do you think this ordering is correct? Source IP address, destination IP address, then source port and destination port, or should these be interspersed?
Seems like it might make more sense to put the port right after the source IP and the destination port right after the destination IP, but
although actually it's kind of nice seeing that these flip around 443. I like it the way it is.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters much when we're in.
You're okay.
Okay, all right. So this is, what does all this mean? TCP sequence. What does this mean for total here?
So if you can you drill down into that?
Yes.
So by following the sequence, you can you can follow the order of the packets and the order that they should be received.
Okay. So this is more information about, I don't understand what this is. When it says for total,
so that's the data set formatting thing.
That's crazy. Yeah, okay. That's because it has the acknowledge thing at the bottom.
Yeah.
That's arguably a rather silly. Okay, it's just because one was missing there. Okay, I get it. Okay. And so to get out of this, let's just say I wanted to get the payload of the first. So I would say (1), info. Well, actually, I could just do this. 1 info.
And then raw.
Payload. Ta-da. And then I would say normal of that. And then I would say, for example, normal of that, actually. Magnificent. Useless.
And that's encrypted stuff, so yeah.
Oh, it's encrypted because it's a port, it's an HTTPS.
Yeah, it would.
And this is where you really get cool, is if you knew the keys and you could just do this.
Right.
Well, it's just a snippet, so that's not gonna.
It won't be sequenced correctly. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, so this looks pretty good. I mean, this looks pretty usable. Now, what if I wanted so you can filter by source port, by destination port, etc., right?
Yeah. And you can also filter by source IP address, destination IP address. And there's more keys too. Those are just the ones that I have working right now.
Well, what are the other keys? What are the other kinds of keys?
Well, I mean, here, let me pull up so this, that's the man page for the PCAP filter. So most of these, like, you know, whether it's an IPv6 packet or IPv4, yeah, this list right here.
Okay.
So I'm not going to do all of these because this is just a lot. The other thing that I don't know if we want to document it.
If you have an order of preference, put the MAC addresses in because those might be really useful at times.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sure. I'll make a note of that. The other thing is that internally, if you know the PCAP filter like as a string, as you'd specify it to like TCP dump or something like that, that can also be passed in. I'm not sure, you know, how to document that.
Why don't we just say PCAP? I mean, why don't we have a thing be say PCAP filter, arrow, string?
Is that part of the association then?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I don't see why not.
I mean, if I can just pass that string in the form of a PCAP filter, yeah, I'd be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, because currently what we do is we just take that symbolic association and build the PCAP filter string, and then that's what we pass down to the library that's doing this for us. So.
Right, and you should probably support a naked rule, not an association, just as a courtesy.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. That's just a little sugar, but yeah.
Okay. Anything else we need to go over here? We really run way over time. This looks really close to being. I mean, we've got.
Do you want to review this one more time after the changes were made?
Yeah,
or?
let's review it another time and look at final documentation.
Okay. One last thing. The dollar. Oh, actually, scroll right back up. The $ network packet filter keys, something our node proposed. It's not an external, but what that variable is that will just give you a listing of all of the supported keys that you can put in that filter association.
I'm not convinced. I think that should be something that's just in the documentation.
Okay. We can just put that in the documentation then.
Okay.
And
I find that useful to have these.
I know. My plan for that stuff is to put them in the data repository, a bunch of those kinds of things. You know, just a small data repository entries. You know, possible filters for this, possible musical instruments for that, those kinds of things. All right, we need to wrap this meeting.
There are some other questions I had about writing the documentation, but we can do that in the follow-up documentation meeting.
Okay. All right, just a practical point, Shadi, I think since you're here, oh, and actually, Billy, if you just had if you had some design that you've been making while we've been talking, we should look at it.
I did get a little bit lost with the back and forth of the small version that you were talking about. You could refresh the page and see what I'm kind of talking about. But maybe that's something I could work with Ian on.
Which one is it?
It should be the top one. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is, yeah, you should work with Ian. It's more like this. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I got a little bit turned around, so I'll touch base with him.
Fine.
Do you think that we'd want to maybe go through time over there? I pose that as a question. Maybe scrub through.
No, it's okay. Too fussy. I mean, this is not the main event. Okay, maybe in the future we'll have more sophisticated stuff here, but this is not the main event. This is just the thing is alive type interface.
Okie dokie.
All right. Great. Okay, so Shadi, I think you're in
Yes.
this next rather brief meeting about, should we just combine these meetings and just, since we have everybody here except Roger, maybe we could just ask Roger to join this session and we will change topics here. I think that would be the easiest thing to do since we don't have very long. Okay, is Eric here? Could he get that to happen?
He is in the other meeting. I'll let him know.
Okay. And then everybody who isn't involved in that subsequent meeting can leave here. Makes sense?
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
I'm going to head out unless you need design around.
I don't believe we do, unless Shadi says we do.
Sorry, what was that?
Do we need Billy from design here?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Billy.
See you later.
See ya.
Bye-bye.